Hey, I'm Erica, and I thought I had it all figured out. A picture-perfect life with my husband Mark, a stunning colonial home, and a sprawling backyard that felt like our own little paradise. But beneath the laughter of weekend barbecues and the warmth of summer breezes, a shadow crept into my world, tainting every smile with suspicion. I never imagined that one night, under the flickering glow of lanterns, my trust would be tested in ways I couldn't fathom, leaving me torn between shame and a dark, undeniable thrill. What did Mark mean when he stood by and watched it all unfold with a smirk? Did he know something I didn't? Stick around, because the truth is more twisted than I could have ever dreamed. Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of my new backyard, the late summer breeze brushing against my skin, carrying the faint scent of charcoal and blooming jasmine. My name's Erica, and at 35, I've built a life that, from the outside, looks like a polished photograph. Every detail in place, every corner framed just right. But as I stare out at the sprawling yard of our two-story colonial home, I can't shake the feeling that something's lurking beneath the surface, waiting to unravel it all. My husband, Mark, and I have been together for 8 years, married for 5 of those. He's 38, a senior manager at a tech firm, and the kind of man who lights up any room he walks into. Charismatic, confident, always ready with a story or a laugh. He's the heartbeat of every gathering. Since we moved into this house just outside the city 2 months ago, he's turned our home into a revolving door of friends, colleagues, and relatives. Almost every weekend, there's a new crowd piling into our space, marveling at the tall oak trees that shield us from prying eyes, or crowding around the shiny new grill Mark insisted we needed. He loves showing off this place, our pride and joy, with its classic white siding, wide windows, and a yard that feels like it stretches on forever. I can't blame him for the excitement. There's something about this house that feels like a fresh start, a canvas for the life we've always wanted. I'm not like Mark, though, where he thrives in the buzz of a crowd. I'm the one who savors the quiet moments, sipping coffee on the porch at dawn, or losing myself in a book while the world outside hums along without me. Don't get me wrong, I love supporting him, playing the gracious hostess when the house fills up with voices and laughter. I smile, I chat, I make sure everyone's glass is full. But sometimes, in the middle of all that noise, I catch myself wondering if we've settled too deeply into the rhythm of our marriage. 8 years is a long time to know someone, and 5 years of marriage can smooth out the edges of passion until everything feels predictable. Comfortable, sure, but maybe too much so. There's no big rift between us, no shouting matches or slammed doors, just a subtle undercurrent, a whisper of something I can't quite name. Mark's colleagues are often at the center of these weekend gatherings, and there are a few who stand out in ways that make me pause. There's Tom, the 40-year-old sales director, whose sharp wit cuts through conversations like a blade. His intense eyes seem to linger a little too long sometimes, taking in more than they should. Then there's Greg, 42, an engineer who doesn't say much but watches everything. His quiet presence is almost unnerving, like he's piecing together a puzzle no one else can see. And Daniel, 39, a project manager with a smile so charming I woke up early this morning, the sunlight barely creeping through the curtains, with a sense of purpose buzzing in my chest. Today was going to be another one of Mark's famous backyard picnics, and I wanted everything to be just right. I spent hours in the kitchen, marinating chicken with a blend of spices and citrus, the tangy aroma filling the air as I worked. My hands moved with precision, brushing the marinade over each piece, making sure it would be tender and flavorful on the grill. Then I hauled out the folding tables, draping them with those classic red and white checkered tablecloths that scream summer nostalgia. I wrestled with the cooler next, packing it to the brim with ice-cold beers and sodas, the cans clinking together as I arranged them just so. Every detail mattered. I wanted Mark to be proud, to see how much effort I'd put into making this day special for him and his friends. By noon, the yard was coming to life. Mark was in his element, wearing that favorite polo shirt of his, the deep blue one that always seems to bring out the spark in his eyes. He stood by the grill, flipping burgers with a practiced hand, the sizzle and smoke rising around him like a halo. His laughter rang out as his colleagues started to arrive, and he tossed out jokes with that effortless charm of his, drawing everyone in. I couldn't help but smile as I watched him, even if a small part of me felt like I was on the outside looking in. The first to show up was Tom, striding across the lawn with that commanding presence of his. He clapped Mark on the back a little too hard, the kind of gesture that's meant to be friendly, but carries an edge, a silent challenge. Mark just laughed it off, but I noticed the brief tightening of his jaw before he turned back to the grill. Greg arrived next, quieter as always, grabbing a beer from the cooler almost immediately. He lingered near the grill, his eyes scanning the growing crowd, taking in every detail with that unsettling intensity. He didn't say much, just sipped his drink and watched, like he was cataloging every word and movement for some unspoken purpose. Then there was Daniel, rolling in with a casual confidence, his smile lighting up as he caught sight of me near the house. He walked over, complimenting the place with a warmth that felt genuine, but his gaze held mine a little too long, a flicker of something unspoken passing between us. I felt my cheeks warm under his attention, and I quickly busied myself with adjusting a tablecloth, muttering a thanks as I avoided his eyes. The yard was soon buzzing with about a dozen people, mostly Mark's work friends, all adults in their late 30s and 40s. They carried themselves with the kind of assurance that comes from years of climbing corporate ladders, shoulders back, voices steady, exchanging knowing looks and sharp banter. I moved among them in my simple sundress, feeling a mix of pride at hosting such a lively group and a sense of unease creeping in. As the afternoon bled into evening, the air grew heavier, charged with something I couldn't quite pin down. The sky above our yard transformed into a deep, fiery orange, painting everything in a surreal glow. Long shadows stretched across the grass, twisting and reaching like fingers trying to grasp something just out of reach. The group had migrated from the tables to a loose circle near the grill, their voices a low hum beneath the crackle of the dying fire. Mark stood at the center of it all, as he always did, a beer in his hand, his posture relaxed but commanding. He was telling some story I'd heard a dozen times before, his gestures animated, pulling everyone into his orbit. I watched from a few steps away, a tray of snacks balanced in my hands, feeling like a spectator in my own life. That's when I felt it. The weight of eyes on me. Not just a casual glance, but something more deliberate, more invasive. I shifted my gaze and caught Tom staring, his look unapologetic, bold in a way that made my skin prickle. Greg was subtler, his piercing eyes flicking toward me over the rim of his bottle, but there was an intensity there that unnerved me. And then there was Daniel, his expression almost hungry, a quiet craving in the way his gaze lingered. I suddenly felt exposed, the thin fabric of my sundress no longer a shield but a spotlight. My fingers tightened around the tray, and I shifted my weight, trying to shake off the discomfort crawling up my spine. Mark noticed. Of course he did. His laughter cut off mid-sentence, sharp and abrupt, like a record scratching to a halt. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I couldn't read him. There was amusement there, sure, but something darker too, something I didn't have a name for. The yard fell quieter, the group sensing the shift, and then Mark spoke, his voice carrying over the murmur of conversation, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's not just beautiful, she knows how to surprise. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, confusion swirling in my chest, my heart thudding so hard I was sure they could all hear it. The silence around me thickened, every pair of eyes now trained on me, waiting for something I didn't understand. I tried to laugh, to brush it off as one of Mark's odd jokes, but the sound came out weak, brittle. Mark didn't look away. His stare held mine, pinning me in place, and then he nodded toward me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though still loud enough for those nearby to catch. "If you want, see for yourself." The words hit me like a physical blow, sharp and cold, stealing the air from my lungs. I didn't fully grasp what he meant. Not yet. But a sick, dawning realization twisted in my gut. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but before I could move, Tom stepped forward. His hand brushed against mine as he took the tray from me, a deliberate touch that lingered too long. Greg was next, closing the distance, his fingers grazing my shoulder in a way that felt far too intentional. I looked to Mark, desperate for him to step in, to say something, anything, to stop this. But he didn't. Instead, he took a few slow steps back, settling himself under one of the towering oak trees, his face half-shadowed in the fading light. He watched, silent, his expression unreadable as the others drew closer. Their touches grew bolder, hands brushing against me in ways that spoke of unspoken permission, a boundary crossed with chilling ease. I should have pushed them away, should have screamed or run, but I didn't. I stood there, caught in a surreal storm of emotions, shame burning hot in my chest, mingling with a forbidden thrill that I couldn't deny, no matter how much I hated myself for it. The world around me seemed to blur at the edges. The crickets chirped relentlessly in the background, their song a haunting soundtrack to the moment. The faint smell of smoke from the grill hung in the air, mixing with the earthy scent of the grass beneath my feet. As the last of their hands pulled away, I stood there, rooted to the spot, my body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. My sundress hung wrinkled and slightly askew, a silent testament to the boundary that had just been shattered. The men stepped back, their laughter bubbling up again, casual and carefree, as if the last few minutes hadn't just turned my world upside down. They returned to their beers and their banter, their voices blending into a dull roar that felt miles away. I couldn't bring myself to look at Mark. I knew he was still there, seated under the oak tree, probably sipping his drink with that same detached air, watching this unfold like it was nothing more than a backyard game. My chest tightened at the thought, a mix of betrayal and confusion clawing at me from the inside. My pulse hammered in my ears, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out everything else. The cool evening air brushed against my skin, raising goosebumps, but it did nothing to soothe the heat of shame burning through me. There was a sticky, lingering feeling clinging to me, not just from the humid night, but from the weight of what had just happened. Guilt twisted in my gut, sharp and bitter, but beneath it, there was something else, something I didn't want to name. A flicker of exhilaration, raw and unbidden, pulsed through me, and I hated myself for it. How could I feel anything but disgust right now? How could my body betray me like this, caught between revulsion and a dark, forbidden rush? I needed to get away. Their eyes were still on me, I could feel it, those lingering glances, heavy with unspoken thoughts. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced them to move, muttering something about needing to clean up as I turned toward the house. My voice sounded foreign, shaky, barely above a whisper, but no one stopped me. I crossed the yard, each step feeling like wading through quicksand, the grass cool and damp under my bare feet. The laughter behind me grew fainter as I reached the back door, but it still echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of the moment I couldn't escape. Inside, the kitchen was a sanctuary of silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound as I shut the door behind me. I made my way to the sink, gripping the edge of the counter with trembling hands. Turning on the faucet, I let the cold water rush over my fingers before cupping it in my palms and splashing it across my face. The shock of it stung, but I welcomed the jolt, hoping it would snap me out of this haze. Droplets slid down my cheeks as I lifted my head, catching my reflection in the darkened window above the sink. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My eyes were wide, haunted, my skin flushed with a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. Who was I right now? What had I become in those fleeting, surreal moments outside? My mind raced, replaying every second, every touch, every look. Had Mark planned this? The question gnawed at me, sharp and insistent. Was this some twisted test of my loyalty? A game to see how far I'd bend before breaking? Or was it something he wanted? Something he'd orchestrated with a cold, calculated intent? I thought about our marriage, the quiet moments of disconnect that had crept in over the past year. The way we'd sit across from each other at dinner, the silence stretching longer than it used to. The way his touch had grown less frequent, more perfunctory, like a habit rather than a need. Had this been his way of breaking us apart completely? Or was it some sick attempt to bind us together in a new, darker way? I couldn't decide which possibility scared me more. I pressed my hands against my face, the coolness of my damp skin a small comfort as I tried to steady my breathing. Outside, the laughter grew louder again, a raucous burst that sliced through the walls of the house and straight into my chest. They were still out there, carrying on as if nothing had changed, as if the ground beneath me hadn't just shifted. I knew I couldn't hide in here forever. I had to confront Mark and seek answers. I stood there in the kitchen for what felt like an eternity, the cold counter under my hands grounding me as my thoughts churned like a storm. The laughter from outside still pierced through the walls, a reminder that life out there hadn't stopped, hadn't shattered like mine had. I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever, couldn't avoid the inevitable confrontation that was waiting for me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I wiped my hands on a dish towel, the rough fabric scraping against my skin, and took a deep breath. I had to face Mark. I had to understand why he'd stood by, why he'd let those boundaries crumble without a word of protest. With every step toward the back door, my resolve hardened, even as dread coiled tighter in my stomach. Stepping outside, the night had fully claimed the yard, wrapping it in a heavy, inky darkness. The only light came from a string of lanterns Mark had hung earlier, their warm glow casting flickering shadows across the grass, making the familiar space feel alien, almost sinister. The crowd had thinned out considerably. Some had left, their taillights long faded down the street, but I could still see Tom, Greg, and Daniel lingering near the grill, their voices low as they chatted with Mark. They stood there, casual as ever, as if the air wasn't thick with the weight of what had transpired. Mark's posture was relaxed, one hand holding a beer, the other gesturing as he spoke, his charm still holding them captive. Seeing him like that, so unaffected, made something inside me snap, a mix of anger and betrayal boiling over, pushing me forward before I could second-guess myself. I crossed the yard, the damp grass clinging to my bare feet, each step heavier than the last. My heart was in my throat, pounding so hard I could barely hear the crickets over the rush of blood in my ears. As I neared the group, Mark's eyes flicked to me, a glint of something unreadable passing through them before his smile returned, smooth and effortless. I didn't return it. Instead, I stopped a few feet away, my voice trembling but firm as I said, "Mark, can we talk?" Alone. The others glanced between us, sensing the tension, but they didn't argue. Tom raised an eyebrow, Greg gave a subtle nod, and Daniel's gaze lingered on me a moment too long before they all muttered excuses and drifted toward the house, leaving us in the dim glow of the lanterns. Mark tilted his head, studying me with that same calm demeanor that now felt like a mask. "Sure, Erica," he said, his tone light, almost playful, as if this were just another casual chat. He gestured toward the far corner of the yard, near the young apple tree we'd planted last spring. Its thin branches were barely visible in the dark, swaying slightly in the night breeze, a silent sentinel to whatever was about to unfold. We walked over together, the distance between us feeling like a chasm, even though he was just a step ahead. The air was cooler here, away from the lingering heat of the grill, and the faint scent of apple blossoms mixed with the earthy dampness of the soil, grounding me just enough to keep my voice from breaking as I turned to face him. "Why, Mark?" The words spilled out, raw and jagged, before I could stop them. "Why did you let it happen? Why didn't you stop them?" My hands clenched into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms as I fought to keep my emotions in check. I searched his face for something, regret, anger, anything. But what I saw chilled me to the bone. He shrugged, a slow, deliberate motion, and a smirk played at the corners of his lips, sharp and cold. "You seem to enjoy it," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, but it cut through me like a blade. So did I. I froze, my breath catching in my chest as his words sank in, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand an explanation that would make sense of this madness, but I couldn't find my voice. Anger surged through me, hot and blinding. Days have turned into weeks since that night in the yard, and I'm still grappling with the echoes of what happened under the flickering lantern light. I'm Erica, and I've been carrying this weight, this secret, like a stone in my chest, heavy and unyielding. Mark and we don't talk about it. Not a single word has passed between us about that evening, but there's a shift, a silent undercurrent that wasn't there before. It's in the way our eyes meet across the room, his holding a knowing glint, mine darting away, unable to hold the gaze for too long. It's in the subtle tension that hums beneath our everyday interactions, a quiet storm brewing just out of sight. A brush of his hand against mine at the dinner table feels charged now, loaded with unspoken questions. Did I imagine the slight smirk on his face as he passed me the salt yesterday? Or the way his voice dipped lower, almost teasing, when he asked if I'd be joining him for the next gathering? The yard, once my sanctuary, a place where I'd watch the sunrise with a cup of coffee in hand, now feels like a tainted memory. I can't bring myself to linger there anymore. I avoid even glancing at the apple tree in the corner, the one we planted with such hope last spring. It started to bear small, unripe fruit now, green and hard, dangling like cruel reminders of that night. Each time I catch sight of them through the kitchen window, my stomach twists, a bitter taste rising in my throat. Those tiny apples seem to mock me, symbols of something raw and unfinished, much like the fracture in my own life. I've taken to keeping the curtains drawn on that side of the house, shutting out the view, but I can still feel its presence, looming just beyond the fabric. Mark, on the other hand, hasn't slowed down. He still hosts his gatherings, filling the house with voices and laughter as if nothing has changed. But I've noticed the absences. Tom, Greg, and Daniel. They haven't been back since that night. Their empty spots at the picnic tables are glaring, like missing teeth in a forced smile. I can't help but wonder why. Are they staying away on their own, unable to face us after what transpired? Or has Mark quietly severed those ties, drawing a line in the sand I'm not privy to? I've caught myself staring at the empty driveway on these weekends, half expecting to see their cars pull up, half dreading it. When I asked Mark about them once, casually over breakfast, he just shrugged, his eyes flicking away as he muttered something about busy schedules. His nonchalance only deepened the unease gnawing at me, leaving me to fill in the blanks with my own spiraling thoughts. Inside, I'm a mess of contradictions. Guilt claws at me in the quiet hours, especially when I lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling while Mark sleeps soundly beside me. I replay every moment of that evening, questioning my own actions, my own silence. Why didn't I stop it sooner? Why did I let myself get swept up in that storm of emotions? But beneath the shame, there's something else, a lingering thrill, a dark pulse that I can't extinguish no matter how hard I try to smother it. It's as if that night peeled back a layer of myself I didn't know existed, revealing a raw, untamed edge that both terrifies and fascinates me. I'm torn between hating myself for feeling this way and being drawn to the memory of that forbidden rush, like a moth to a flame I know will burn me. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. I don't fully regret it. Not entirely. That night, as twisted as it was, showed me a side of myself I'd never confronted before. It showed me a side of Mark, too, one I hadn't imagined in all our years together. His words from that confrontation by the apple tree still echo in my mind, sharp and cutting. "You seemed to enjoy it. So did I." Those words have burrowed deep, planting seeds of doubt and curiosity in equal measure. What does that say about us? About the life? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.